Hello, this is Dan from Games Radar, and I'm here with Matt.
Hello.
And Matt has been given the unenviable task of reviewing No Man's Sky for us.
I think it's quite enviable. It's not bad.
Well, it's the infinite game.
It is. It's quite a hard game just to stick a score on. I'll give you that.
So you've been playing it for a week now, pretty much non-stop.
Yeah.
And you've been doing a review diary along the way. And I think the first day you were kind of in awe of it all.
Yeah.
What was happening. And then maybe on the third and fourth days the cracks started to appear a little bit.
Yeah,
but you always said at the end, I can't wait to go back and play more.
Yeah, and I think even after sort of more than 30 hours, I think that's probably still true. Like, it has this weird thing in that you'll get to a point when you're playing it where you've been playing it for sort of 2 or 3 hours at a time, and you do get this sort of almost claustrophobic sense of I've seen this same sort of thing before or a similar thing, and I'm seeing the same sort of thing again. And even to the point that, like, as the game gets bigger and you get deeper into it and you unlock things that let you go to different galaxies, the same thing is always true in that you're always on a certain type of planet and you're always, like, mining for different materials. And later on, those materials might be worth more, but the kind of that feeling of traversing a planet and sort of looking out for something to mine and kind of avoiding or documenting life forms and things like that. Like, even though it does change as you play, that same thing is the same throughout that entire experience. And I personally quite enjoyed that. I know that probably sounds like a really boring thing to some people, but for me, it was compelling enough to last me 30 hours. And I say in the written review, I'll probably go home and play it tonight as well. So,
do you think that's the thing? It's fair to say that's what the game does best, kind of the slow exploration and observing what's around you?
Absolutely, yeah, that's definitely it. I think if you're willing to kind of if you're not looking for like a really nourishing narrative experience, and you're willing to just sort of not even turn your brain off, but kind of let yourself be immersed in this kind of alien life form and pretend, I guess, that you are a man in an alien sort of space documenting flora and fauna, then that's definitely what it does best. And if you can get into that, it will last you probably forever, because it's quintillions of planets. It's absolutely huge.
It does sound very impressive, yeah. So it does that part of the game really well, but then you go on to say in the review that when things speed up a bit, when combat gets involved, it starts to fall apart a little bit. Yeah, it does a bit. I think that kind of feels like it's not been crowbarred in, but it's certainly one of the less successful aspects of it. I think because it doesn't feel like a combat game, like even whether you're in space or on the planet, the actual sort of fighting itself is pretty sort of unsatisfying. And even the way that you kind of when you're having space battles, the way that you kind of build your shield and survive those kind of conflicts is by going into the menu and kind of refilling your shield and stuff like that. It doesn't feel like it kind of the way that shooters and kind of, I guess, space shooters, vehicle games, things like Battlefront work. You won't have that same sense of familiarity here. So there's kind of a feeling whenever you do any of the combat stuff of something's not quite right. Like it kind of puts to one side the kind of the mechanics that we're perhaps used to, and that kind of really makes it like it feels like a really jarring experience if you've gone from that kind of quiet exploration thing and you're kind of pooping around the galaxy and stuff, which may admittedly sound really boring to some people, and then you're kind of thrown into this situation where you're having to get used to a completely different set of systems that you're probably not familiar with. I mean, even if that's what you primarily want from the game, if you just want like a space shooter, you probably won't be getting as much out of it as you would otherwise. You'll probably still be bored by the boring bits, but not particularly enthralled by the combat. So you've been placed in this infinite universe now for about a week.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're playing the same game you played on day one? Have you progressed at all?
There's definitely a sense of progression. I mean, the kind of the stuff that you've done and the stuff that's behind you really feels like sort of almost quite monumental, but it also kind of feels like it's gone. Like you're never going to go back and look at that stuff. And the sense of progression you have is lessened by the fact that each new system you go into, there's that immediate hit of familiarity. So you're like the path that I'm taking, essentially, I'm kind of seeking out a certain anomaly that appears in some galaxies that will give me access to a black hole, so I'm kind of jumping forward that way. I think it's different for other paths. I haven't actually tried the Atlas path, but yeah, you're essentially like you're playing for quite a long time, but it's not like a kind of traditional game in that the further down you get, the more different it'll feel. You're not sort of you can find different types of system as you get further in, and you can unlock new tech, but it's not wildly different. Like you like to the untrained eye, I don't think you'd look at someone who's playing an hour in and someone who's playing 30 hours in and say, well, this is vastly different.
So how do you feel about the kind of the structure? You say you're on a path. Is that is that leading you specifically towards points over time?
Yeah. So the main path is to get you to the centre of the universe, and there's sort of two different ways of looking at the star map. So you can follow that path, and the more you upgrade your warp drive, essentially, the more you can jump in a single setting. And then there are other parts of that will let you sort of go quicker through that path, and then you can kind of turn that off completely and go out into the sort of wild blue yonder, and that's where you kind of get different types of solar systems. So the more you upgrade your warp drive, the more sort of different types of star you'll get to. So like the kind of top tier type of warp drive will take you to a blue star, which has different types of planet. So yeah, there's definitely a difference between those things, and it is progressive and there is change, but only within the conflicts or the confines of this type of game. You're always going to get the same sort of experience.
So it definitely doesn't sound like a game for everyone, but if you're looking for this kind of experience, you're really going to enjoy it. Right?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I really like it, and I will go back to it. I know sort of a lot of my colleagues have felt the same way about it, but also I've had sort of people on Twitter admit they thought it was quite boring. So that is a really, really unhelpful thing to say in a review. But truthfully, I think if you go into it with measured expectations, and you certainly don't go into it just hoping it'll be the game that you always wanted to be without really realising what it is.
It's not an FPS.
It's not an FPS. It's not even like a space combat game in the same style as, say, something like Elite Dangerous. It's an exploration game. It's about sort of documenting planets. It's about finding new things, and it's about being sort of swept up in the majesty of this huge experience. And that's the game, I think. And there's also kind of puzzle elements of unlocking language and things like that in it. So unless you're willing to invest the time finding all this stuff and just being kind of engaged by the singular purpose of exploration, then it probably isn't for you. If you are, there's a good chance you are, because it's an interesting game. It's definitely very different from a lot of other stuff. Then you probably will enjoy it, but exercise caution, I'd say.
Okay, so as mad as it is to give a score to an infinite game, if I had to force your hand, what rating would you give this? I'm
giving it a 3.5, which, purely on the basis of my experience of it, would seem low. I think I've had, like I said in the review again, that it's probably the best 3.5 I'll ever score, and certainly the most technically impressive. And it seems kind of belittling to give a game of this scope a 3.5 score, but truthfully, for a lot of people, they're not going to get the same experience out of it. And I think it kind of that acts as a word of caution to go in with sort of measured expectations.
Well, there you go. Thanks, Matt. No Man's Sky 3.5 stars. For more No Man's Sky videos and every other big release coming up this year, keep it on Games Radar Plus.